Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, the Paramount Podcast. I am Mike Saz and joined by Chris Anderson. We are going to get to know the Cincinnati Bearcats as the Mountaineers prepare to bus to Cincinnati with a pit stop in Columbus, play a game at Nippert Stadium as they celebrate 100 years of football at Nippert. Noon game, FS1. I think it's an elimination game, Chris, when it comes to the Big 12 championship race. Both these teams are sitting on 2 losses. They're in that group of like hopeful slash hopeless, one or the other. This is a coin flip scenario here, but the winner gets to live another day. The loser, no chance with 3 games to go. Those are the stakes. And boy, isn't that what you want when you line up Cincinnati and West Virginia in a Big East revival, huh?
Yep, sounds like it. You put it best right there. Losers out, done, over. Winner gets to go another week where they get to talk about the 17,000 different scenarios that have to happen for them to have a chance to make it. So, um, I don't think that's going to deter anybody's effort here. I think they're obviously going to be both be pushing for the win no matter what. But um, can we start here? Did we ever think there was a world where we saw West Virginia here? Yes, 4-4 and 3-2, something like that. I mean, this isn't the best case scenario for West Virginia, but we saw this as a possibility. Yes.
I was looking at my notes this morning. I had him at 5-3 coming to this
Okay.
point.
So within the realm of possibility, Cincinnati, did we ever think they would be in this situation right here after last season?
I bought the stock, Chris.
Ooh,
I was this is the people on the board were thought I was nuts for this. But there's a story here that we'll get into about their roster and the work they had to do, and I liked some of the things they did. I thought their schedule, as far as like the over under was, I think it's 4.5 or 5.5, whatever. No, it was 5, so it's a push right now. Not that I was like I'm gambling on that, but I was like, I'm going, hey, reasonable non-conference. Should they be able to? I mean, their home schedule is pretty favorable in the Big 12 too. The reason that I'm wrong on both these marks right now was Pitt. Like they should have beaten Pitt, Cincinnati, and I had West Virginia beating Pitt. Um, Pitt a little bit better than we thought, so you can kind of roll those off your back a little bit, those 2 losses, but they still matter. But where would both these teams be if they actually had one of those games? Because both of those were winnable games. Cincinnati was up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. West Virginia 10 points with 5 minutes left, but um, that's the thorn on their sides here. But here they are, otherwise pretty even. And Chris, even looking at the stats, um, not numerically, but what West Virginia's offense and Cincinnati's defense, what those matchups struggle with or they excel with, they're pretty even. And even like the rankings for their defense and just certain metrics, they're kind of similar teams. And did you see that coming? Did you see West Virginia and Cincinnati being in the same boat in 2024? I'm not sure I saw that.
I'm going to say Cincinnati got whooped by West Virginia last year and said, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to try that. We're going to try what West Virginia did. Nah, maybe not. I don't know.
Um,
But I'm with you because I thought, well, I don't know if I thought Cincinnati would be here, but the one part I was a fan of was the Sorsby ad. That was the one I said
yes.
in the preseason. I was like, hey, man, I think Indiana really screwed up by not letting this guy cook a little bit because he got started there at Indiana and his first outing was against, was it Ohio State? I think it was somebody like one of the best defenses in the country. And then his second game was against, or third game was against Michigan. And then they basically just went away from him.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, man, a lot of guys are not, yeah, it was Ohio State. And his next start, one of his next starts was against number 2 Michigan at Michigan. A lot of people are not going to look like a good quarterback playing against those two teams.
Mhm.
And they basically abandoned him for a while and then came back to him. And he wasn't bad. He wasn't amazing. But I think he could have been more there at Indiana. And now, Cincinnati's getting to reap the benefits of that.
We were thinking about playing quarterbacks early. Like you've heard Neil Brown talk about this before too. Once you break the seal, if their confidence gets shot, it's hard to put that back together again. And so he's changed the scenery, changed the coaching staff. I get that too. You also forgot to mention it would be hard for anybody at Cincinnati or excuse me, at Indiana to be good before this year because I know they're awesome right now, but that is not the norm here too. Speaking of quarterbacks, Chris, the matchup here. included even in Cincinnati's game notes, which are otherwise very good. Enjoyable read for me this week, but it's touting a Garrett Green, Brendan Sorsby matchup. Quite likely we're not going to get that. Notable to me that Neil Brown did not play this out until Saturday, 11:59 and 59 seconds, but said doubtful, which doubtful is you're probably not playing, and they're hopeful he throws this week. I've heard he's been out there a little bit. I have not heard he's been throwing. It's going to be Markio again too. You caught some of the comments, I'm guessing, from the coordinator and the head coach this week, and they talked about how they really made it simple for him in preparation to go out to Arizona, and not because that's where he played high school football or it's a road trip, just like it's his first start. So a team that shifts and motions a lot and uses a variety of formations really pared that down, ran their stuff, but ran it from a much smaller number. And that's probably why you didn't have, apart from the initial issues with some pre-snap stuff, didn't have confusion, timeouts, play clock expiring, anything like that. That looked good. And he was efficient. And so they got out of their own way on stuff like that. With 2 weeks now between games and giving him another start, you figure they're going to evolve a little bit. And Chad Scott, no, there's no reason to do that. We're going to run a few formations and run all of our stuff out of it so he can get the looks from the defense. And that's where this gets interesting, Chris, because the quarterback matchup is one thing, but the defense matchup, this is Iowa State's defense, including importing a coach from their Iowa State's defense to make him the coordinator this year. Kansas State's similar, and that was Marchio's first game. Cause for alarm there just because of that, possibly. But then you look at the rankings, and nobody should be alarmed by Cincinnati's defense.
Did West Virginia do well against Iowa State?
Until they
No.
started throwing the ball to the wrong team, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, a little bit of cause because I mean, anytime you tell me, even when it oddly enough, even when it hasn't been true, anytime you tell me over the last several years, oh, something is similar to Iowa State's defense, if you are a West Virginia fan or you cover West Virginia, you're like, oh God, that's not good because West Virginia has struggled against Iowa State's defense more often than not. So I think if they're bringing it, and they're bringing them over there for a reason because typically that defense has been good. It has forced opposing teams. If I'm remembering correctly, when we talked about Iowa State, we talked about how their defense forces you to make 7, 8, 9, 10 plays in a row in order to score instead of the one big play. And I think my comment was, who's not really good at doing something correctly 10 times in a row? College aged males. Like they're just not. They're not going to make mistakes. And you know what? It's good that Cincinnati's trying that, but they may not be as good of it as they are at Iowa State because Cincinnati's not as good as Iowa State. So I think it's as simple as that. It's just a what do you say, like a homeless man's version of Iowa State's defense that probably has a few cracks in it where you can break free for those big plays every once in a while.
Speaking of defensive coordinators, Chris, the other side of the ball has a new one too. That would be West Virginia. Jeff Coons, he's in. I think I just said this. 2 weeks between games, time to prepare and evolve a little bit. You can expect something to be different, right? No. This is not more of the same. I'm not going to put that on Jeff Coons. I know the stuff that he said sounds like that too, but as you read between the lines of his pretty interesting monologue this week about the defense and how he's 100% behind it. He has the full confidence that it can work, and there's full menu of plays that everybody knows, and it's just a matter of getting the right ones picked out and the people in the right spots. They know what to do. That is a long way of saying we just got to be better at what we pick to do, and we've got to be better at the plays we call. Is that sufficient? 8 games into the season. I understand that they just cannot reinvent the wheel right now, but like when you're rolling a rectangle out there, you might need to pare and shave a few things. You might need to, reshape it. I'm not sure. I understand the explanation. One, do you buy it? Is he in sheep's clothing right now and he's going to come out like a wolf on Saturday? Or two, is it really as simple as like getting new eyes in there and having him saying, I'm going to call this play instead of this play. I'm going to break this tendency and do that.
Well, we've talked about it already. You can't really change the scheme. Like even with an open week, you just can't do it. I took I took note of the first, I think it was very early in his press conference where he said he focused on the getting lined up, getting ready. And he would make comments like, go look at the tape. Like, guys aren't ready, guys aren't lined up. Other than that, it didn't seem like, yeah, like you said, like he was going to change a whole lot back there.
Mhm.
And guys just got to get better. You know who else said guys just got to get better, Mike? Like 2 weeks ago, Jordan Leslie. So,
Yes. Mhm.
um, it, and I'm laughing, but I'm not saying either of them are wrong because at this point, that's really the only, like, not the only answer, but maybe the easiest answer. Um, expecting something different. I don't know. There will be something different for sure. I think he is doing the sheep and wolf clothing there. And oh yeah, we'll come out and do the same stuff. I think there'll be something different. We haven't seen him call plays in a while, not at this level. I wonder how aggressive he will be.
Yeah.
Will this be a defense that will be more aggressive? Will it bring more linebackers? Will it bring more blitzers? That's the thing I'm going to be watching closely on Saturday.
There was a podcast I listened to over the summer, and it might have been Jed Jennings, and he had a guest on, and he talked about how like in between the 30s, middle of the field, West Virginia was really exotic pre-snap last year. Would do a lot of movements and make things difficult on the offense. Man, I can't say that's happened this year. I'd have to look at the data, maybe call that guy. Look, maybe I'll ask Jed. I don't know, but I just watching the game observationally, it just seems like boy, this isn't hard. Like this is kind of it's like a boxer who just keeps his hands here, right? That's the picture frame. You go right down the middle, right? So if you're the same defense, the same look over and over, you're not shifting, changing shapes as much or as often or as effectively, you become easier to pick. And like you can just watch games and teams are figuring them out and solving them on the fly. And that really bugged Brown. Maybe they're easy to anticipate. And just some things you're thinking about, all right, how can they fix stuff? What can they do? And we wrote about this, or I wrote about this, and just try to figure out, all right, what are some things they can change? And just predictability was one because you can just look at trends. They don't blitz from the field side, which is fine. But when they've gotten home and they've never blitzed in the boundary side. So like you can really pare down this the corners and the safeties, I should say, not from the linebackers and defensive ends. So if your corners and safeties are always going to be in the same spot, you don't have to worry about them at all coming around the corner, you're a lot more comfortable as a passer. And there are other things you can look at too, like they run their defensive tackle outside the offensive tackle shoulder to get the bandit free for a blitz. That becomes easy to game plan. What did Neil Brown say this week? We got to be more consistent, this and that. We shouldn't be as predictable. We cannot give them the answers before they take the test. And that is a way of saying we were stationary targets. I think that's one way of putting that there. So does Coons have to be aggressive? Yeah, maybe more so on third down, maybe more so on first down. I don't know, but just some diversity there, I think, would be a big step. Let's just stick there. Let's stick with the defense for West Virginia against the offense for Cincinnati. The big deal for Cincinnati is that they hit on quarterback, and they've fallen off a little bit in the run game as far as how often they run, but they're still pretty effective when you come to Kiner and Pryor, kind of different guys. The tight end is really good, and he was just a guy before, but they have some holes too, and it's been tricky to balance offense and defense. But sometimes their offense has been there, and sometimes it hasn't been on days they've needed to.
Yep. And where does the offensive success live and die, Michael?
Offensive line,
Offensive line. Let's start there because there's been a little bit of movement, at least at a couple key spots
they
here,
have
and I
good
find it
players there.
interesting.
They have good
Huh?
players there too. They have good
Yeah,
players, like all conference caliber players.
they do. And then they have all conference caliber players at a couple spots. Some guys that I thought would be all conference, but have not. And then there were a couple injury to D'Artagnan Tinsley there for the middle portion of the season. And I think again, once you start throwing a wrench in the offensive line and you're moving guys, getting hurt, it can throw everything off. So I wonder how much that has to do with it. Because the first 3 games of the year, Tinsley started at left guard, DeAndre Buford at right tackle. Then Tinsley got hurt. And then they moved Buford from right tackle, because I don't know if I'm mirrored on this video or not, but right tackle to left guard.
Strange.
Yeah, let me ask you, have you ever heard of that before? Moving a guy out to in to the other side of the line, like
I'm
mid
sure it's
season.
happened, but you're typically right side, left side in that. Like West Virginia likes Nick Cray because he can play right guard and right tackle. Would you
Yeah.
ask Johnny Williams to come in and play for Jaquay Hubbard, that's a tough thing to do, right?
Yeah, because even if you move left tackle to right tackle, like Nick Malone did a couple times last year, you're going
I,
tackle to tackle. You're not going left tackle. I don't know. Anyways, so Buford goes from right tackle to left guard, does not perform well, but still has to stay there. And then Philip Wilder comes off the bench to take over right tackle. Once Tinsley gets healthy, Tinsley takes back the left guard spot, and Buford's lost his spot at right tackle and is now in a rotation with Wilder at right tackle. So
Mhm.
I think a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of odd rotations and movement there. And then, of course, obviously, the injury to Tinsley started it all. I think that might have thrown a wrench in their offense there for a good portion of the season.
Um, Kendra, all
Mhm.
conference kind of guy, right? I believe he's been hurt, right? No, he's been there the whole time. Who's the guy who's been? Oh, no, him and Gerhardt. They haven't been hurt. They've been there. Those are their two all conference caliber kind of guys, and been fine. Good blocking grades, but you're right, not enough to make up for everything else too. What do you make of this, Chris? They like 90% of their runs are zone plays. Like they don't gap stuff very much. They don't power stuff unless it's quarterback plays. It's zone. It's a lot of outside zone too. And Pryor's a home run hitter, and Kiner can break a ton of tackles. In fact, he's one of the leaders in missed tackles for us. But West Virginia's defense can be light up front and small sometimes, but also when it's good, it hits the gaps, and when it's bad, it's out of alignment too. This is going to be a zone running game too. Again, that's obviously what Cincinnati does. I'm not sure that West Virginia's bad at it. It's been good against the run when it's been good on defense this year too. But are there points there that you have to pay attention to when it comes to whether it's Cincinnati's blockers or West Virginia's defense?
Yeah, that was something else I was going to ask you. Talk about. I just said I've never seen the right tackle switch over to left guard mid-season because of injury. When we talk about the zone gap splits, say, hey, this team's more of a zone running scheme or a gap scheme. It's like 70-30, something like that, maybe. Corey Kiner's numbers 107 to 15, according to PFF. Like,
Mhm.
so it is almost exclusively zone here. Um, that's something to keep on. And really, I'm focused on Kiner because he has, despite some teamwork and maybe the ultimately the end stats may not be quite as high as what everybody expected. He is second in all of the Power Four conference in missed tackles forced this year with 55, which is already more than he had all of last season, 4 games ago. He has a 177.3 elusive rating from PFF, which is second in the entire Power Four conference. So he is a guy that is going to be very, very, very difficult to tackle. But I got some good news for you, Michael.
Yes.
Can you tell me which team is the best tackling team in the Big 12 conference and by quite a margin?
I know it's not Cincinnati, so if we're on this podcast, I'm gonna go West Virginia.
It's a pretty good guess, Michael. Good job.
Mhm.
They have a 12.3% missed tackle rate. The average in the league is around 16%.
Ooh.
West Virginia's at 12. Um, that's one of those good on good situations. Like who's going to win this battle of, hey, we tackle and do run defense well, you do run the ball well and you block well. Let's see what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And so I'm interested, very interested to see that matchup.
Yeah, their gap runs, if you take away the quarterback, it's a lot higher than 70-30. Their gap runs are Sorsby, and he has 6 touchdowns, which has made Kiner's work a little bit easier. But all of his 6 touchdowns, the quarterback, are in the red zone too, so he's not a threat to go. But when they get in the red zone, it's pretty clear what they do. They don't mind running like RPO stuff or using the quarterback to run, and they flip it to their tight end a little bit too. Pryor is really interesting. That's a guy who just couldn't get on the field, stay in the field at Ohio State. You can understand there's a talent problem there if you're third or fourth string. Not a lot of carries, Chris, but if you look at guys who have 35 or more carries, he's number 2 in the country and 9.2 yards a carry. He has 3 home runs this year. He's got 3 touchdowns at 55 yards or more. And it's kind of neat to watch them when you start peppering them with Kiner, and you get Pryor comes in, who's just different, and all of a sudden that gap's open because your defensive line is a little bit leaning here and there. Your linebackers aren't as quick, and all of a sudden he shoots it and he goes. It's not always 55 yards, but like 9 yards a carry on 35 carries. Sooner or later, you kind of have to go, all right, well, Doesn't play a lot, but he does something every time there too. There's something to watch on that one too. Your guy Sorsby extremely efficient this year too. We just mentioned him as a runner, and not doing it with a ton of targets. It's kind of been funny. They have some talent there. They have guys who they can throw to, but to complete 66% of your passes and to really target just two guys, Henderson and Royer. I guess they use Johnson quite a bit too. And there's a transfer. I'm trying to remember his name, but just I guess it's a two-man game outside and the tight end in the middle. They don't really do a lot with their running backs in the passing game. Um, it's not hard to figure out what they're going to do. They have their outside guys and their tight end, but it's been pretty good this year too. And West Virginia's secondary question mark. What do they expect out of that one here too? But Henderson had success against them last year. Where do we go this year?
I mean, it's the age old question. It's are you going to do was it Kansas State where hey, we have the most success when we
Yeah.
run, but West Virginia is so terrible at pass defense. All we're going to do is pass because and Cincinnati's not bad at passing. They're not.
Mhm.
You go and look at their expected points added per play when they pass. They're number 22 in the country, top
Yeah.
25 when they pass the ball. Would you like to take a guess at where West Virginia's defense ranks out of 134 teams?
In EPA for rush defense,
Pass defense.
for pass defense, I'm gonna guess it's probably in the bottom five.
133 out of
So it's
134. So please, like again, if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm like telling my running back, like, hey, buddy, get some rest this week. We're passing. Like
Mhm.
it's not even a question to me. And Kansas State did that. And Kansas State put up big points on West Virginia.
Mhm.
You don't have to be a passing team to beat up on West Virginia's secondary.
Mhm.
And those EPAs stats back that up.
Yeah. If you look at some of the games where Cincinnati has not run the ball very well this year, there's two that really come to mind. Texas Tech, they had 129 yards rushing and they scored 41 points. That's encouraging because if you're not going to do the rushing like they always do, then you're going to have to do something a little bit different there. And that was a good game for Sorsby. He kind of lit it up a little bit and had some things working in a game where he had to because it was kind of ping pong going back and forth. In that game, he had I'm trying to remember, yeah, 426 yards and four touchdowns. Reason being, there might not be a worse pass defense in the country than what Texas Tech is doing. UCF, different story. Cincinnati only scores 19 points there. 241 yards passing. They overcome two interceptions. Sorsby's only thrown four in this year, but like that's 45 and 38 passes in those two games, five touchdowns, three picks. So if you can make them, if you can't run it, they're going to pass it. And it's not a guarantee it's going to be great. UCS pass defense, middling. It's not great, but Texas Tech is one of the worst, and we've already established. So too is West Virginia. So you can see the incentive here for the game plan that you're talking about. And again, that's why West Virginia's diverse, self scout or whatever has to be effective here too. Are you inherently worried about Joe Royer just because he plays the tight end position and will be opposing West Virginia on Saturday?
I mean, if you do college fantasy, like daily fantasy for college football, on your degenerate, that's okay. Two, I feel like you have to slot in those tight ends every single time against West
Mhm.
Virginia. You just have to.
Mhm.
Um, Middle of the field's open, linebackers struggle in coverage. That who does that benefit? Tight ends and slot receivers. So yeah, it should be a concern.
In those two games we just mentioned, Texas Tech and UCF, 15 catches, 150 yards. So they obviously went to him when they had to get to the air. He has 36 catches, Chris. That is pretty high in the country for tight ends. He had four catches in 3 years at Ohio State too. So Ohio State
Hmm.
again, there's a chance to be good life after Ohio State. The other thing is too is that he's one of the most targeted and most he has some of the most targets and most receptions among Power Five or even FBS tight ends too. Um, there's some crazy numbers in the MAC tight ends. I don't know. I was surprised. It's like a tight end in the MAC for Bowling Green. It was like 100 targets this year and 75 catches. So Royer would be higher in most seasons too. And six touchdowns all in the red zone. When they get into the red zone and they have a not a great tracker here to getting down there. They kind of make things work. Anything else stand out to you for this matchup, offense against defense?
Now I'm ready to switch sides.
All right, West Virginia offense, Cincinnati defense. Chris, we've given praise to the free safety, three down front look that Iowa State employs in Cincinnati pilfered by hiring a linebackers coach to be the defensive coordinator. And yet we can rattle off some numbers here for Cincinnati's defense, and it just hasn't been very good this year. Scoring defense, good, 21.1. Ultimately, that really matters. But if you look at some of the individual, or I shouldn't say individual, team statistics, that's where it gets a little bit more concerning. They're 90th in rush defense. They are 100th in pass defense. They only have 3 interceptions. That is tied with West Virginia for 117. Pass efficiency defense hasn't been very good this year, 107. You can air it out, you can run it. You just can't score against them as often as you would think. I have a thing here I want to get to, but overall, what do you read of this? Because ultimately, scoring defense is most important. They've really tightened that up lately, but they can be moved if you have something going on offense.
I got two things that can explain it. One, number 17 in the country in touchdown rate allowed inside the red zone.
Yeah,
So teams are getting in the red zone. They are scoring a touchdown less than 50% of the time,
very good.
47.8%. That's amazing. The second part of this is I feel like in the games that they've lost, especially their two most recent losses, it's been bad, like real bad,
Hmm.
which has kind of skewed the overall team statistics. And in particular, I'm looking at third down defense. That's kind of been the key because when teams don't get off the field, they continue to get more yards. When they continue to get more yards, your rush defense suffers, your pass defense suffers, so on and so forth. In their three losses, Cincinnati's three losses, opposing teams are 20 of 38 on third down for 53%. And that includes, I believe it was like 4 of 11 against Pitt, but 23 of 67 in wins,
Hmm.
34%, which would be one of the best third down defenses in the country.
Hmm.
So in those wins, and then overall for the year, they are one of the best third down defenses and red zone defenses in the country. And if you get people off the field and you don't let them score touchdowns, then that's going to make you one of the best scoring defenses in the country, even if you are giving up the yardage. So that is where I see like they can be exploited is if teams can just kind of chunk off the field because where did I have that up? They were like with the last couple of losses, it was like 9 of 14, 8 of 13 on third down conversion. So they are susceptible to giving those up if you can try to get a rhythm going. My concern for West Virginia, Mike,
Yeah.
do you know what West Virginia's average third down distance is?
Oh, you done the math on
Average.
this?
Average.
Ooh, boy, this is a hard one to calculate. You did this. Good for you.
Well,
I
I
was
didn't do it. I'll tell you where I got it from in a minute. I
I'm
didn't
gonna
do the
say
math.
third and 7.1.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Come on. That's exactly what it is.
Are you serious?
Yes. Third down. Well, excuse me, 7.15 yards.
Oh, that's 7.2. Shoot.
Yeah. Round it up, 7.2. Um, yeah. So the other teams, when they're facing Cincinnati, they're winning first and second down. They're making it third and shorter, and that's why Cincinnati starts getting a little more susceptible on that third down defense. West Virginia, despite not being terrible on third down on offensively, they're still facing an average of 7.15 yards to go to get a first down on third down. Like that's not sustainable. That's not good offensive football. I know there's a lot of stats that say West Virginia's doing well, maybe even above average on offense, but that is a like flashing red light. One of those flashing like, oh my, emergency, emergency. This is not good because having 7 point third and 7 points, if you have third and seven, do you think you've had a good drive so far? Has that been a good first and second down? No.
Probably not.
So West Virginia has to get better there if they want to take advantage of that because whenever Cincinnati loses, bad on third down defense.
There's a weird split with them. Their home defense, it's just a different level. Like they're one of the stingiest red zone possession teams when they're at home. I was trying to find their total defense here, but and then when you look at some of what's happened lately with them, their past couple of games, Chris, um, the Texas Tech game got crazy. Texas Tech going out there, whatever. But right before that, they shut out Houston. And I know Houston's not great, but that to shut that offense out, like that's pretty good. And they only gave up, I forget what it was, like 200 and something yards. But the last 3 weeks, Chris, 13, 14, and 24, sorry, 34 points allowed. UCF, Arizona State, Colorado. UCF can run the ball and ended up around 200 yards. Arizona State did not have their quarterback, but still had Scadaboo and only got 14 points there. And then had to go to Colorado, gave up 34 points. That was kind of a weird game if you watch that one there, but competitive nevertheless. I wonder if they figured some things out with their defensive coordinator and if it's kind of maybe turned a corner and it's better now, better lately than what it was earlier in the season. I'm not sure. We'll figure that one out perhaps um, on Saturday afternoon. But when you look at here's my stat right now. If you look at just the home defense here, the scoring is very good, but man, they still give up a lot of yards. So they're about 100th when it comes to total defense yards per game in home games. Okay, fine. But when you kind of flip that a little bit and you look at what they've done lately, much healthier. And then they're a top 25 defense in points per game when it's at home. So you can take a broad view of their defense and say there's a difference between these last couple of games and also at home. Well, guess what, Chris? They're at home Saturday, and that's the one thing you worry about. Kind of a boogeyman. Is this defense figuring it out? And by the way, it just had an off week and didn't have a whole lot of stuff from West Virginia to study. And West Virginia has come out and said we're not going to do a whole lot different. So that is a concern right there. The other thing too is that if you look at West Virginia's offensive line, it's not lighting the world on fire right now. And Cincinnati's got some guys. Like they have a really good like defensive line platoon they can get it going. Corleone is tremendous there, and they've got some guys who get in the backfield. Again, they've hit the portal with some playmakers there too. They can stop the run at times. They just haven't been able to do it yet. Are there spots? Are there people that West Virginia picks on or has to avoid?
Oh boy, I get to defend the honor of the offensive line, or at least maybe one or two members of it.
Okay.
Um, the one guy I think you're referring to here is Eric Phillips, one of their edge rushers. He has 29 pressures. That is tied at the top of the Big 12 with four players, one of them being TJ Jackson at West Virginia. I know people are say, hey, we've heard this a lot lately. And yeah, you have, because the other is Brendan Mott from Kansas State
Mhm.
and Trey Smith from Arizona, all players that West Virginia has faced in the last couple of weeks. Well, Brendan Mott, when he played West Virginia, he received his worst PFF grade of the season, 53.8. 65 is average, or a quote above average. Trey Smith from Arizona received his second worst PFF grade of the year, his worst PFF pass rushing grade of the year, and had zero pressures when he played West Virginia. Can West Virginia have the same success against Phillips? Now, I wonder, because I'm with you. As a whole, offensive line has not been as good as maybe they should be, or however we want to phrase that. Are they putting so much focus on stopping these kind of elite pass rushers that they're having to face that it's then opening up gaps at other spots on the offensive line for teams to attack? That's possible. And maybe that happens again on Saturday because Phillips is right there with Mott, right there with Smith, right there with Jackson. In fact, he's doing this in 100. He had 29. All these guys have 29 pressures. He's done it in 183 pass rush snaps, which is, I believe it was like 50 fewer than Mott, 50 fewer than Smith, and right about the same as Jackson. So he is an efficient pass rusher as well.
Yeah, they got guys up front. Dante Corleone, they call him the Godfather, of course. He's a nose. As he's a nose as a nose you can get. Him against Brandon Yates, an odd front lined up over the center. Erratic snaps, whatever. That's something to absolutely keep an eye on. He's very good for a nose to get you 20 pressures, a couple of sacks. He hurries the quarterback a bunch. He's in the backfield often. He's just very good. And he's made the freaks list a couple of years in a row. He's like 6'1", 320, but super strong. Bruce Feldman likes him, writes about him. It seems like it's a guy who's going to be in the NFL eventually. Um, it's a bit of a scare with him, but he had blood clots, and they weren't sure if he was going to play or when he played. But he came back in week 2, and he's been a fixture ever since. Behind those guys, here's more talent, Chris, and guys who are being put into very good spots here. Let's get the Jared Bartlett thing out of the way here. Best season of his career after making a move to have the best season of his career.
I mean, yes, Is he having the best season of his career? Yes. Is he doing anything drastically different than what he was doing in West Virginia? No. I think they're just giving him more time and putting him in maybe a little better position to succeed with what they're asking him to do. He
Mhm.
is a pass rusher. He's leading the team with 6 sacks right now. I think he's like third in pressures with 19. But he is the player that he was at West Virginia. You
Mhm.
know, he's a very good pass rusher. He is one of the worst on the team with missed tackles.
Yeah,
So that's and it sounds familiar. It should, but I don't know. I feel like this is just it's maybe one day we'll get the full story on this. This is about the most amicable breakup between coach, team, and player ever. They're just like, yep, that was fun. Great few years. I believe even when he left, like West Virginia, like when he announced he was transferring, like West Virginia even like made a graphic for him to announce his transfer. Like, we'll even give you our graphics department on your way out. And Neil Brown was great with his comments about him. Bartlett's been nothing but gracious about his comments for West Virginia. So kudos to him. But I don't think he's the same player he was. He's just getting more opportunities there, which I think was the point of him leaving.
sure. Yeah. One of 26 transfers that Cincinnati has on the team. They have 47 first-year players. 26 of them are transfers. And again, you can talk on this, Chris, but West Virginia, Cincinnati, Big East, in between the Big East and Big 12, now in the Big 12, they do run into each other um, with some frequency on the recruiting trail. What Cincinnati did in the final 2 years of Luke Fickell really set them back as far as a roster standpoint. And I think that would surprise a lot of people who think, oh my gosh, they're in the college football player. They were undefeated. They must have been so good. Sure, but they were senior laden, and then the transfer portal became a thing to help them out. But their recruiting classes, his last 2 years, were not very good. And that's why Satterfield really struggled to get some things. But they have hit on a number of transfers this year. And it's guys from major conference schools. Who's the safety from Louisville? Minkins, right? That was actually committed to West Virginia. He's back there now. It's Bartlett. There's players, skill positions on offense, offensive line. The long snapper is a transfer. They've also hit on FCS players, which the frequency of winning on that is let's just say is difficult, as we've learned. They've gotten a bunch of guys who can do that came up and are backups or are starting in significant positions like long snapper. Um, but man, the find, and this is like the great FCS example here is their linebacker, Jake Golday, is having one of the best linebacker seasons in the country. And here's a guy who was at Central Arkansas and came up and he is a menace if you watch him play. When their defense is going good, when it's not going good, he's still flying around, but he makes a ton of things happen. And again, just the ratings, the reviews say that that is an absolute win in the portal, but it's also one of the better seasons at his position in the country right now.
Yeah, not a bad find there for them. Leads the team with 45 tackles. A little bit of a havoc rate, couple sacks, couple pass breakups, couple forced fumbles, couple fumble recoveries. One of those guys that just kind of seems to be around on it all. So that's a nice pickup. Something else I noticed when I was looking at this team, Mike,
Mhm.
they play a ton of dudes on
Yep.
defense.
Yep.
They have 22 guys that have played at least 100 snaps, and
So two
that's a
deep,
lot,
Chris. Yeah.
huh? Yeah, full two.
Two
Like
deep. Yeah.
I know people might think, it's not that many. West Virginia has battled a ton of injuries. They have tried different combinations. They've benched guys. They've put in new starters. They've moved guys. And West Virginia's only has 18 guys with 100 snaps on defense.
Mhm.
So Cincinnati is not afraid to rotate guys in, put in packages and sub packages, and put in different personnel. So they got guys that are ready
Mhm.
to get in there. Um, Antoine Peak Jr. I think he started the year as the third string star, is what they call it.
Mhm.
He's now starting. I think he took
Used
over
to be
the
a walk
starting
on
job.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, started in week 7, week
Mhm.
8. Keep an eye on him. Like top rated guy on PFF. So keeps getting better.
Covered his dad too. I think he when West Virginia lost in 2003 to Cincinnati, that was the day they fumbled a bunch and lost like I don't know 15-12 or something like that. He was on that team. That was a strange day, but Damn, I'm old, right? It's kind of a weird thing now. There's actually players on West Virginia's team. I covered their dad. It's kind of a strange thing. Just to go over the portal stuff, the quarterback, their backup running back, and three of their top four receivers are from the transfer portal. On defense, multiple starters. They have a captain who never played for the team and was or that one of the guy who never played for the team was named a captain. He plays safety, both their starting safeties, including Minkins, who was briefly committed to West Virginia. And then four of their top five tacklers, starters on the defensive line, starters in the secondary, starters at linebacker. They're not the best collection, but they're not in this situation right now where the stakes are whatever they are. They're not a better team this year without that success rate, and it goes in there. It's been a pretty good story for them and how it's happened. And it had to happen too here. Anything else here in this matchup of the West Virginia versus Cincinnati angle we're looking at?
One big stat for you.
Sure.
Well, I think it's a combo stat. And then I got a question. Total defense, if you go yards per play,
Hmm.
West Virginia ranks 110th.
Hmm.
Cincinnati ranks 111th.
Hmm.
If you go by total defensive plays, like just the amount of time that the defense is on the field, West Virginia 10th, Cincinnati 24th. Both teams,
Wow.
one, are pretty good at third down defense when they're good. Again, I noted Cincinnati is good, and then they've had a couple really bad ones. But they also love to shorten the game. So,
Yeah.
Mike, over under what, 8 drives or eight, yeah, eight possessions, 8.5 possessions. I'll set the line at 8.5. What do you think for the game on Saturday?
Man, I was thinking in my head like probably nine, so I'll go over.
Okay.
Um, but the other thing is like these two teams do not turn the other team over.
No.
That's
That
a bad thing here too. Although Cincinnati has forced 11 fumbles, Chris. Do you know who's fumbled 11 times? Like, can I turn the tables on you?
no.
West Virginia, 11
Uh-oh.
fumbles. So watch out for that too. Like it's they're good at knocking that ball out. I've seen that a couple times. Just watching like, oh, a fumble. They don't recover them. They have like no return yards this year on defense too. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, that's an interesting one to keep an eye on there. It feels like someone's going to try to get the ball for 32 minutes here and see what happens.
Yep, yep.
Finally, let's kick the tires in the schedule. You want to do that for a second?
Sure.
News this week: buyout East Carolina. We said that that was going to happen. That did happen. We said that they were going to get a neutral site game. We thought we were putting the things together in our head. We kind of figured that that 26 spot would be filled by a neutral site game. West Virginia was not going to buy out a team to go on the road and play somebody. And West Virginia was not going to buy out a group of five team to go pay another group of five team, easy seven figures. So what's left? You're not going to get a team to come home and play another like a home and home or something like that. It'd have been very difficult. They could have tried to get somebody, but it was difficult to find people who had an opening and wanted to come to West Virginia. I would imagine a lot of schedules are already done, and if you're looking for a team, you're probably not looking for a Power Four opponent. So slim pickings. A neutral site game always seemed the outcome. So we did in our head, hey, let's draw a circle around some NFL stadiums and who's got openings. And Virginia was one of the ones that we figured out. They're actually going to get rid of a Notre Dame game, Chris. That's how much this means. So if you think this is a bad thing or a bad deal, West Virginia is bouncing ECU to get $2 million to play Virginia. Virginia is bouncing a game against Notre Dame to play in this and get $2 million too. So and then the big surprise is that I think that this is something that maybe was in the works and they just decided to do it. This might have actually already been finished. The second game against Virginia in 2032. Let me start there. Do you have any issue with playing two neutral site games 6 years apart against the same team? And if it was like Pitt or Penn State, maybe not. Is it amplified at all by being, I use this very loosely, just Virginia?
No, 6 years seems just the right amount of time between games for someone like Virginia. Like, Pitt, Penn State, Maryland, Virginia Tech, like to see it more often. 6 years for somebody like Virginia or Tennessee. Obviously, those two programs are not on the same level as far as talent or history or whatever, but I'm talking about as far as
Or Twitter?
easy. However you view them as a WVU fan, 6 years is just the right amount of time between. I thought that was really smart of them. And wait, were you implying there? And I think I agree if you are. The 2032 game was done already, and then it was like, hey, you guys want to do figure something out about 2026 after?
Yeah. I wonder, and I wonder if West Virginia didn't say, "Hey, ECU, do you want to go to Charlotte? Because we know some people there. We got a game there a couple years later, but like maybe we can do this, we can play this, but I'm just not going to Greenville." Like I wonder if that happened, but I think that ECU is or will move its game against NC State to Charlotte for a similar reason. Like NC State's like, what are we doing? That would be really hard for an athletic director to do. But I bet you that they were like, wait a second, we're doing this. Why can't we do another one? I think that they were trying different options for 26 because 2032 is done. I think. Um, Foye will figure out when the contracts were signed, but that would be my guess that the chips fell like that.
And you're right. We agreed that this was going to be a Power Four neutral site game. Like that, it's all about the math, as you said. You buy out ECU, 300,000. If you tried to purchase a one-off game with a group of five school, you want to hear some of the costs? This is one, two, three, four, five, six. The top six, not even that. Now let's go to eight. These are the main eight P4 versus group of five payouts to purchase a buy game for this season, 2024. So
I don't
imagine it
think
goes up from here.
I don't think people are ready for this, but the numbers are enormous.
1.9 million. Alabama paid Western Kentucky $1.9 million to come out there. Michigan paid Fresno State 1.9. Texas paid Colorado State 1.8. Nebraska paid UTEP 1.7. South Carolina paid Old Dominion 1.5. Wisconsin, Western Michigan 1.5, and so on. So 300,000 plus 1.5, a couple $1 million
Cutting into your
in the
margin.
hole. How much does West Virginia make for a home game?
They get the right opponent, they'll net 2 million ish. Good day
Okay,
better.
so
Yeah.
they might break even if they maybe a little bit ahead if they got a home game against a group of five. Like if you're paying over a million and you're already paying through, I mean, it's just not worth it. Just not worth it. So yeah, makes more sense to get the 2 million minimum,
Mhm.
minimum keyword
Yeah.
in your story there. Guarantee from Bank of America Stadium.
Mhm. Let's get to the literal elephant in the room. Alabama Crimson Tide.
Hmm. Is
Mascot's
it
an elephant.
fixed yet? Is it fixed?
So here's the thing. And this is how powerful and I would say even necessary that payday is. That's 11 power fours in the schedule, Chris. And apparently that's illegal in all 50 states. Can't have it, right? And I'm gonna guess that there are probably people who are like, "Oh boy, what a bad deal by Rem Baker. He's falling back in his word, so on and so forth." Two things. One, I don't care. Like UVA in Charlotte is not the same as Alabama at home or in Tuscaloosa. It's not. And who knows what state UVA will be in there, right? Or West Virginia for that matter. Um, I would think that West Virginia sat down and said, all right, what's the likelihood that this team that we bring on the field in 26 loses in Greenville? What's the likelihood this team loses in Charlotte against Virginia? And I imagine that it was probably not even a little bit more toward UVA, but the gap was not 2 million bucks. So you do that and you say, you know what, 20 million in revenue sharing, got to get our assistant coach salary, our head coach salary, our budget from, the lower quarter of the Big 12 to hire for football. This 2 million bucks will help. And if that means you got to play 11 power fives, tough, right? You're the AD, you make good money too. You make that decision and you tell everybody to get used to it. However, there are strong indications from the head coach that they do not want to play Alabama. That is a $2 million get out. Um, that's going to be tricky.
Wait,
$2 million
$2 million.
does
How much West Virginia is getting how much from the
$2
Bank of America
million.
game?
Yeah. So like that
Oh,
symmetry does kind of stick in my head. And I know people are saying, well, they got this because they're going to get rid of Alabama and they're going to find, well, here's what you get rid of Alabama, you're paying that money. You already have an FCS opponent. Who are you getting as a power five, or excuse me, a group of five opponent that you just rattled off that money, Chris? So you're paying $2 million to get rid of Alabama, and then you are a hostage in contract negotiations with a MAC school, a Sun Belt school, a Conference USA school. Let's just say you're lucky and it's 1.5. 2 million to make Alabama go away, 1.5 to make a MAC school come here, $300,000 to make ECU go away. That's dumb. Never mind how it might look. So I understand people are saying one move precedes the other. You might be right. It doesn't mean it's right. And just, man, the look of walking away from a home and home with Alabama because you're tired of being 0-1, go 1-0. Like, you're allowed to do that, right? But I understand the math there. I think it's a really tricky thing, and you're covering yourself a little bit by getting the money on the back end. I get that. Now, the get out of jail free card here, if you will, for Ren Baker for West Virginia, and the thing that would make me look dumb in some time, if the SEC does strike a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, if the SEC does go to 9 conference games, okay, you have less room on your non-conference schedule. You make somebody go away. West Virginia could say, hey, we've been winking at you from across the room for months now. Can you please reciprocate? And that might happen. It's not that easy, though. If that extra conference game is at home or away would make a difference. If that extra Big Ten SEC game is home or away would make a difference. So West Virginia is the home team in 26. If Alabama has to go on the road and play another SEC team or a Big Ten team as part of a pact, West Virginia goes away. I get that. But Alabama plays Florida State and West Virginia at home that year. One of those two can go away depending on the identity of that extra game, whether it's the Big Ten or the SEC. That could very well happen. Will that happen in time? I don't know. It's 2026, but that's not super far away when it comes to scheduling and making a change like that. You'd have to, if you're adding those games, the Big Ten or the SEC, you're asking what, 30? How many teams in the schools now? Like 32 teams? 31? I don't know. You're asking a lot of schools to make major adjustments to their schedule.
So I'm going back to your math there a little bit ago. To get out of ECU, to get out of Alabama, set everything to replace both of them, you're paying 3 point and then purchase a new group of 5 school. You're paying basically $3.84 million
Yeah.
to make 2 million from Charlotte, 2 million from a home game, maybe a little more. So you're paying 4 million to make between 4 and 5 million.
I
How
mean,
much is your dignity worth? Is it worth less than $1 million as a program? That's
like
my question.
the math you just explained makes a lot of sense. Like perhaps they're doing this and they went and got 2 cash grabs because they're going to be spending a lot of money to fix their schedule. That is entirely possible. But like Alabama has not heard from West Virginia about this when we first checked. The people that we know
Oh,
down there we talked to.
I'm not saying they should do it. I'm saying you're
Yeah.
basically you're sacrificing your dignity for less than $1 million.
Yeah. What was that money with that movie with Woody Harrelson and Demi Moore and someone will tell me that one there. So it's interesting. Again, the whole contracts between Alabama and West Virginia, it could clean this up because it acknowledges that conference dynamics are changing and there might need to be a change to schedule and they can figure out a way to do this tidier. But that's where things stand right now. Could it happen? Sure. Has it happened yet? No. And the fact that the SEC doesn't know if it's going to go to 9 or get the Big Ten makes me think that there's still some time before this is settled. How long will they wait? I don't know. Let's wrap up here. Back to the game. Noon, FS1. I'm trying to think who's on the call here. I don't know this one, but I
Oh,
don't have to worry about me.
Chris Myers and Robert Smith. So Robert Smith had a rough week last time around. So
Yeah, yeah. Can I mute this one from the press box? Do I have to worry about that? Anyways, should be a lively crowd there. I believe it's sold out. There'll be a lot of West Virginia fans there, I'm sure. Homecoming-ish for Jeff Coons. Last time he called plays was at Cincinnati in 2016. That's kind of cool. Spent some time there. Who or what are we talking about? Roughly 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, Chris.
I don't know if you saw me grimace earlier when you said it, because I already had it in the back of my mind. Brandon Yates versus the Godfather. Like that's it. I mean,
Is that
it's
it? Okay.
Dante Corleone has been a PFF darling for multiple years, and he's seen his role gradually increase year over year, and he's continued to produce. He's one of the best pure natural nose tackle, nose guard, whatever you want to call him, that plays lines up right over center. When West Virginia's offense struggles is when the snaps are off, when the timing's off, when there's pressure up the middle. That is the matchup. That is the matchup of this game. And I don't think there's another answer otherwise. Sorry.
Well, my microphone has just died on me, it looks like, so I'm going to make this pretty quick. If it sounds different, it's because my snowball in front of me decided it was going to cease working here. Um, but quick starts. There are some fascinating data when it comes to the coin toss and kickoffs. I think I'm the only person who really fixates on this. It's turned into a bigger thing than I ever imagined. I have a winner stat that I will share before kickoff there. It's kind of, but Cincinnati, again, their home splits, road splits are great. They're one of the more productive first quarter offenses in the country. About 12 points a game. I believe it's in the top 10. At home, it makes it a little bit easier, but whether on their home field or on the road, they score in the first quarter. That's going to be interesting to see what happens. West Virginia, man, I know they were up 10-0 last week, but they were looking at 2 field goals in Arizona. If they don't get that fake field goal touchdown, I wonder what type of game that turns out to be. We'll see. Who knows? It doesn't matter at this point. That first quarter, coming out of an open week, a new defensive coordinator for West Virginia, Nico Marchio, maybe a little bit more evolved with what he's allowed to do. A lot of like maybe feeling each other out, but I just think that sure, it may come down to the fourth quarter. I think that's more likely than, one team is playing its backups because it's so far ahead or so far behind. That first 15 minutes, there's a lot of drama there because one team has been pretty good and the other team has a defense that's going to be trying to figure things out, but also can stump Cincinnati's offense if it just is effective at the start. Lots more to come on the site here. We got a basketball game tomorrow night. I will be in Cincinnati. Andrew Corbett will be on site there to cover that. Got some fresh set information coming for you. By the numbers, previewing the game. Got the 3 key matchups. Chris, what do you have up your sleeve there?
A couple more preview pieces and several new recruiting offers out. Got a story up with a recent basketball official visitor. Went up earlier this morning. A 7-footer from Iceland who now lives outside of Boston came to visit Morgantown. That young man has seen a lot in the last few months, from there to there to there. Big time recruit, more big time recruits coming to campus for basketball. So keep an eye on that because early signing period is coming up later this month.
Boy, busy time. Never fails. Yeah, so a lot going on, a lot to capture, a lot to report on in the next coming days. Stay tuned. Earsports.com has you covered. Until then, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.